I'm Melanie Thornton. I'm from the University of Arkansas, Partners for Inclusive Communities, and I'm glad to be here this morning. There are advantages to doing a talk about failure, because if I do, well, it's fodder for the next time. But we'll get started. So perhaps the meme on the slide has it exactly right. Perhaps success is not what people think it is, as the image on the left shows an arrow moving upward at a steady angle. Perhaps instead, success actually looks more like the arrow on the right, a squiggly line that's circuitous and filled with trial and error. So have you ever pitched an idea that fell flat? I have. Have you ever tried something new and it didn't work out nearly as well as you'd hoped? I have. Have you ever gone into a situation naively and realized that you had stepped on a proverbial landmine? I have. And I'm okay. No, actually, I'm good with that. So I could share a lot of personal examples about failure, but I'm going to pick just one. Several years ago, I was working at a different university, which will remain nameless to protect the innocent and the guilty. And I was part of a campus-wide effort to promote universal design. And of course, with any new idea, resistance is expected, but the resistance we met was staggering. One particular faculty member, in fact, launched a counter-campaign against universal design. He convinced himself and other professors that it would limit their academic freedom. So he even went so far as to write a proposal for faculty senate and to propose that the university not adopt anything related to universal design. So the resolution was voted down, but it really knocked the wind out of our sails. All of the momentum that we had gained to that point was really lost. And it was a major misstep on our part. So how should we respond when we face failure? It seems to me that we have a complicated relationship with failure, mistakes, messing up, both individually and in our organizations. On the one hand, we see organizations where people are so afraid to make mistakes and so afraid to call out the mistakes of others that errors just live underground until they grow to a point where they can't be ignored and become a crisis. Then on the other hand, we have organizations where when a mistake is made, the spin doctors rush in and absolve everyone from any guilt, convincing everyone that it wasn't really a mistake, it was just things that were out of their control, right? And I've experienced both. Maybe you have too. But there's compelling anecdotal and now research that shows that it's possible to leverage those mistakes or failures in ways that can actually catapult us forward. Let's take a look at some of that research. Oops. Okay. Recent studies conducted by Celine Malcoach of The Ohio State University. Can I hear? You're supposed to say, woo! Her colleagues revealed that participants who focused on their emotions following a failure are more likely to avoid making the same mistakes again. And in an interview about their findings, Celine Malcoach says, as shown on this slide, all the advice tells you not to dwell on your mistakes, to not feel bad. But we found the opposite. When people concentrate on how bad they feel and how they don't want to experience these feelings again, they are more likely to try harder the next time. Well, Doug Dietz would probably agree with this study. Doug Dietz designs MRI scanners, magnetic resonance imaging scanners. On this slide is a traditional MRI scanner. You can see a long table or platform that leads its way into a cylinder, and it's kind of an off-white and tan color, very sterile looking. And inside the cylinder is dark, right? Kind of looks like a cave. Well, several years ago, Doug had spent 2 years designing an MR scanner that was similar to the one that I just described. He was so excited to see it in action that he went to the hospital where it was being used for the first time, and there happened to be a child that was going to be scanned. So when he went into the room, he saw that the child was terrified, and the parents were spending all their effort trying to console the child without any good results, and he was just devastated. He realized that they had designed something that was terrifying to children. It was a powerful experience for him, and he felt the failure deeply. He realized that he and the designers were focused so much on the technical aspects of the design that they had not thought about the experience of children that they were hoping to help. So he went back to the drawing board, and this time he consulted with the real experts, children. And he and some other designers came up with a totally different experience for children. And here's what they came up with. So on this slide is a picture of one of the scanners that they created, and they made it look like a pirate ship. So not only did the scanner look like a pirate ship, but they created an atmosphere around the scanner that gave the impression of being on a boat. So the walls are painted with blue sky. There's a castle in the background. There's a pirate swinging on a rope. There are fish swimming by. And how do you think the children enter the scanner? By walking the plank. So they created a very playful atmosphere for the kids. So when this scanner was used for the first time, once again, Doug wanted to see it in action. And again, it was a child using this one. Can you imagine? So he went and the child went through, and afterwards he was standing by the mother. The little girl ran around, tugged at her mother's pants, and said, "Can we come back again tomorrow?" So they had totally transformed the experience for this little girl. It also reduced the amount of sedation needed by kids. Before they changed to this model of scanners, using the traditional scanners, about 80% of children who got MRIs were being sedated. Using this scanner, that dropped to 27% or below. So now Dietz could have, going back to our theme, Dietz could have listened to the spin doctors who said, "Oh, you haven't failed. The amount of terror those kids experience is brief and nothing compared to the lives that will be saved by this scanner." He could have listened to that. Or he could have listened to the voices inside of his head that said, "Well, we were limited with the materials we had available to us. There's not enough money. The problem is not us. It's the lack of resources." But he didn't listen to those voices. He felt those feelings, and he felt that failure, and that made all the difference. Fred Kaufman, the author of Conscious Business, who's shown here on this slide, along with this quote, put it this way: "The price of our innocence is impotence." I'm going to say that again. The price of our innocence is impotence. When we convince ourselves that we are innocent, sure, it feels better in the short run, but we become powerless to solve problems because we have placed ourselves outside of the problem by blaming circumstances or other people. But when we allow ourselves to feel the pangs of failure, when we recognize the part that we played in what went wrong, we have both the power and the motivation to do things differently. We can leverage our so-called liabilities to propel us to create solutions. Our failures become stepping stones to a better future. So perhaps you wonder what happened with the situation I described earlier, my personal situation. I'd love to tell you that we built a universal design pirate ship and had faculty clamoring to climb aboard. But no, that's not how it went. It was much less dramatic. But how it changed me was powerful nonetheless. My experience, though less dramatic, was that what I realized is I knew the exact conversation where things went wrong with that faculty member. And if I recognized that the very missing ingredient that could have changed it all was empathy. If in our conversation with that faculty member, we had listened more deeply to the challenge he was facing and come up with a win-win solution, well, I'd have to tell you a different story of failure right now. I think it would totally have transformed that situation. So would I change that if I could? Probably. But what I realize is that I'm able to use that situation in every situation from since then and forward to, when I'm trying to influence change, to remember how important empathy is when I'm working with other people, and how important it is to seek first to understand. So James Joyce describes mistakes as the portals to discovery. But we can only be true that, or this can only be true if we truly own them and leverage them for our benefits. So the next time someone tells you that the mistakes that you make are a liability, join me in saying, liability, my asset. Thank you.